And welcome back. So today I'm just so thrilled to have on our next guest. I met her in Los Angeles years ago. We were in a voiceover class and it was so fun. It's just been really awesome seeing her journey. And you guys, definitely, as you've heard before, you're not going to want to miss this episode because she's also a professional actor. She also is a career coach. I can't wait to hear a little bit more what she has to say about that. And recently she's been featured in the New York Times. That's right. I said it, the New York Times. She started Actors Rise. That's the name of her company, which is it empowers actors to take control of their careers, which is so important. And then she also started the free Actors Rise newsletter. So please give a warm welcome for those of you who like to clap along for Jenna Doolittle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It sounds so fancy when you say those things. I'm like, this is not me. This is a different person.
Isn't it great? Like, isn't it great to have people intro you sometimes because of that?
I mean, it feels great. I should just take you around everywhere I go and you can be like my hype machine.
I
I love
love it.
it.
I'd love to. That is actually one of my favorite things is introing other people. And then when I'm asked for a bio of myself, it's like, what have I done? You know, it
Oh,
just it's easy to like for ourselves just kind of be like, well, I did this, but now on to the next thing. And what's the next thing that I need to do or want to do? And kind of forget all of those other things along the way that people would
totally.
be like, wow, about.
Well, we're so boring to ourselves. But I actually was listening to somebody on Clubhouse recently saying that they make a hype list about themselves, like of all the amazing things that they've accomplished in their life, and not just like, not just things like career goals, but like if they gave birth or if they were the first person in their family to graduate high school or, or they, aced a test or something, like things that made them feel like whole and powerful. And they kept that list with them for whenever they were feeling like imposter syndrome. They could take that list out like on their phone and they could read it, and that just really like helped them center themselves. And I loved that. So I need to make my like hype list because I definitely get
Right.
imposter syndrome sometimes.
The hype list, I love it. Yeah, that the whole thing about that. And I always find it interesting too when people ask the question, I forget when I was asked this, some oh, I think it was actually an audition for something. And you never know what you're going to get asked for it. It wasn't a typical, well, it wasn't a theatrical audition. It was like a sort of commercial audition type of thing. And that, you know,
Wait, what was the
um,
question? Tell me about yourself.
yeah, well, there were like 10 different questions, right? But some of them got pretty deep. And one of
Oh,
them, because yeah, it wasn't going to be like a typical commercial or, it might have been industrial. Anyway, whatever. The important part is one of the questions it said was like, what is the thing that you've done that has made you the most proud of yourself?
ooh,
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, if you guys want to, if you do have an answer ready, you guys listening, maybe take a moment to think about it. I'll tell you what mine was.
Yeah,
But okay,
please.
okay. Actually, and we were catching up about this a little bit before the podcast started, you guys. But mine was actually that I was in LA and that it didn't matter what I did or didn't accomplish there in terms of, I didn't get that network regular. I didn't, get in the next big blockbuster there yet, right?
Yeah.
But none of that mattered. The thing that I was proud of is the fact that I was there. And I stayed there when I stayed there after like the number of times where it's like, oh my goodness, like looking for a regular job was so difficult, apartment hunting, missing my family so much, like all of these sort of personal things that I valued.
Sure.
I just kind of like persevered for like that belief in myself.
Yeah.
And just the fact that I did that, I'll always be proud of it.
It's so worth celebrating. I
Yeah.
I mean, I think we don't celebrate our like smaller wins enough. And that's not a small win, of course, like staying somewhere and, experiencing things that are sometimes challenging because you want to push yourself, you want to grow, you want to learn. I think that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then conversely, I'm proud of myself for leaving. It was just
So
like,
important.
that
Yep.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
I think the yeah, one of the reasons I was so grateful for that question is because so often when I think about what makes me proud, I do think of the things that society would say. I think
Mm,
of, well, I graduated from here or I got honored or blah blah blah. But when I really ask myself what made me proud, it's those things that made me dig deeper, that
Yeah.
gave you these sort of internal wins
Yeah. For
and growth.
myself, yeah, what comes up for me is when my mom was really, really sick in the hospital, and I was like really there and present and really asking all the hard questions of the doctors and nurses, and really showed up in a way that I didn't know I was capable of. Like, that's probably for me, like the thing that I'm really proud of that comes to mind, which has nothing to do with career and accolades or anything like that. It's just
Right.
like being a good person, which I think
Right.
we forget sometimes that that's
Right.
important. Yeah.
So important. And I hope she's all better.
She's doing well.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. That's awesome. Yeah, because what I know of you is I feel like you would be one of the people to have. Like that, like if I was picking my team of people from the class we were in, of if I were going through a difficult time or if I needed somebody, I would be like, get Jenna Doolittle there.
That's very sweet. I will attempt to receive that. Thank you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's see, where do we even start? You know what? Actually, you're the first career coach that we've had on here. And you're, of course, also a professional actress. Do you prefer actor or actress?
I'm happy with whatever people want to say. I remember in college, everyone was like, "You're an actor," and I define myself as an actor. But yes, I'm an actress. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I had this conversation with a friend of mine and I said, I think it depends. Because he was like, oh, is it derogatory to call somebody an actress? Because he had some like blowback. I said,
Hmm.
honestly, I think it depends how people trained or what market they're in. Because like I feel like going to theater school, a lot of times they were like actor, 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 but then you see the casting breakdowns and it's like actress or actor. So I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not picky.
Okay, okay.
Just give me an audition. I'll take it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, can you just talk a little bit about um how it is that you became an actress, and just your journey from that to the career, to being a career coach? Because this is a loaded question, I know,
I know.
but
I'm like, where do you want me to
I
start?
know. I've got so many things I'm throwing at you, and then just pick whichever one you want to run with. Because another reason I was excited to get you on here, again, my impression of you is like you are a person that I was like, oh, similar to me. It seems very like kind of like organized list maker, very ambitious. And for myself, I found it a little bit hard to kind of roll with the uncertainty of the acting life, maybe a little bit more than some of my colleagues who their personalities more go with the flow.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious to see, did you ever want to do anything else? Did you always want to do this? How do you kind of roll with that? And then how did that lead you down this other part of your
Yeah.
career path?
Great question. I mean, I've been acting since I was really little, and I started like when I was 7 in community theater because my cousins were doing it, and I just wanted to be like them. I'm also an only child, so it was a way for me to like, express myself and collaborate with other people, and I loved the like coming togetherness of it all. But I definitely was always kind of a bit of a perfectionist, even as a kid. Like, I always wanted to be the best version of myself that I could be. And in a lot of ways, that helped me. But as an adult, sometimes that hinders you, right? If you are always striving to be perfect or the best, you're never going to do anything because you can't complete anything, right? And you're holding yourself to just like ridiculous standards that like can be really pull you down. So it's a struggle that I deal with and I have for years. As a kid, I didn't initially want to be an actor. I actually wanted to be a nurse, which is funny because I've like played a nurse on TV a million times now, which is like full circle hilarious. But I think that's interesting too because nurses help people and I really love helping people. So that is just like part of maybe who I am and who I've always been. But I put a lot of pressure on myself to help people and to be the best version of myself. And I think that was one of the things that you wanted to talk about with me today. Yeah.
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 Because you're a high achiever too.
Yeah,
So how do we
exactly.
process that?
And I feel like it's any character trait we have has pros and cons, but I almost don't even want to say it like double-edged sword or pro and con because I feel like it gives it a negative a negative slant where it's like every personality trait we have can work for us or potentially against us, depending on how we
Yeah.
integrate it. And what I came to realize is one of the reasons why I was like, my mom's a teacher, so I always like loved school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the reasons why when I was out of school, I was like, I miss school, is because it was very clear.
Sure. Yeah.
Do
Those
this,
steps.
do that, like the math of it. It was so clear. And then especially in this industry, there's not anything particularly clear about it other than be the best that you can at what you're doing and stick it out. I feel like that's the
Stick it
one thing.
out. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. But I also think there's a fallacy to say, like, there's not just one way to be an actor, right? Like
Right.
you can be an actor and do community theater and you're still an actor.
Mhm.
Um, so it's challenging for me to like even separate all of these things sometimes. But I talk to my clients sometimes in coaching, and they struggle and they'll be like, well, I'm not in the union yet, so I'm not a professional actor, I'm not an actor. And I'm like, no, you're an actor. If you're a baker and you bake really good treats, you're a baker. You just maybe haven't opened your bakery yet, so like you can sell your wares out there. So you have to take that step to understand, like, how can you sell yourself to the rest of the market? And that's like where art meets commerce, right? And that's something that I'm kind of obsessed with, and I like nerd out about it a little bit. But you're still a baker, you're still an actor, but it's like, how do you open your bakery and start selling what you have to the world? And I think that's the disconnect that sometimes happens for people, where they feel like if they just bake and bake and bake and bake, like eventually everyone's going to want their treats because they're going to hear about them. And sometimes that happens, but most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time you have to like get a storefront and like get, business cards and do all of these things, like market yourself and put yourself out there and ask for what you want in order to actually like have a sustainable career.
That's huge. Are you guys that are listening already like, can she please be my career coach? Because because that is one thing that I haven't tried for my acting career. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a few other things, but that's one thing. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna have talk after.
You're so funny.
Yeah, because there is that sort of disconnect, and I know that was one of the things I was grateful for having to learn when I was in LA was just kind of that mind, like, oh, the business part of show business,
Yes.
which I'm still gathering information on.
Yeah.
So, like, what are some of the are there any sort of like free tips you can share with people or
I
like
mean, I am the queen of giving away information. I love to help people. How long's the podcast? Basically, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Um, I think there's a lot of times there's just things we don't even know that we don't know. So that is why it's so great to get information, to read books. I mean, Brianna Ansel, who's a talent agent, just came out with a great book. Like Bonnie Gillespie has a book for actors on the business side. So here I'm plugging other career coaches. But the thing is like every every actor has can learn from all these different people and like take nuggets of information away. So thinking about like, yes, like your branding and your type and what the market demands matters, like having headshots that really look like you and look like the roles that you play now, not the roles that you're going to play 5 years from now. And then having footage that matches that. And if you don't have a reel, shooting amazing self tapes and making sure that your self tape setup is stellar. And then creating real, authentic relationships with people in the industry, because at the end of the day, this is a relationship industry. It's who you know. And it doesn't matter then what agent or manager you're with. You will have these relationships with casting and directors and producers throughout your whole career. And if you start them now, you get to grow them and they grow with you and you grow with them. And you sometimes become friends. And like that's part of the reason why I got into this business in the first place, was collaborating with other people who are like passionate about the same things that I am. So I talk to my clients a lot about, seeing yourself as a peer to these other industry professionals and bringing your own worth and value to the table and collaborating and maintaining relationships. That was a lot. I don't
Oh, no, I
know.
know it's great. It's please bring on the a lot. We're here for it, right, guys? We're here for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's overwhelming at first, like when you first move to a city, and especially if you have gone to school for theater and you feel like, well, I'm trained, I'm ready, I've been doing this for forever. And they tell you, but you need to be taking class all the time. You're actually maybe not as trained and ready as you thought you were. We need you to be in 5,000 on camera classes that will be recognizable on a resume. And is that true for everyone? Again, not necessarily. And that's what can be challenging in the actor journey is you see some people pop right out of college, you see some people have success really young, but for most people, they really are who are working actors, you're managing your business and you're taking classes all the time and you're adding different tools to your tool belt. You're collecting relationships and hopefully you're maintaining those relationships so that they serve you throughout your career.
Yeah, that's great. Two things on there just to kind of touch on slash reiterate is the constantly training, constantly taking some form of class that's going to help your art, whether or not you are able to do those continual on camera classes. I mean, do something else that's going to still feed into that creativity.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I remember one of my teachers in grad school, he had said, John Jory, he had said something about like being constantly training because he's like, listen, if you guys were dancers, you would stay in dance class like you would still do it every week. But
Yeah.
for some reason for actors, we don't. But I think that's because I mean, I will say I think part of it is because you can still do a lot of your acting training in like observing life and other sorts of actor training.
Yeah.
Um but at the same time, yeah, that's not going to replace a continual like weekly class.
Right.
That
Well, it's
that's
a
where I'm trained.
muscle. And
Right.
I tell my clients, like, you don't have to be in class all the time. Like, you can
Right.
take a month off here or there. Sometimes you need to give yourself space and breath in your life to
Yeah.
live life because as actors, it's not just about, the classes that we've taken and our technique. It's about like what is our personal life experience so we have something to pull from in our work. And
Yeah.
if we're, just putting our head down in an acting class every day, we're not going to be able to understand like what it's like to lose a loved one because we might not have been maintaining our personal relationships, which is so important.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. And so then when you talk about relationships, creating relationships, maintaining relationships with like, casting directors or, other industry people, what do you just like get on a sort of dating app and just swipe left or right? No, I'm kidding. Obviously.
If only that
Like
would make things easier, right? Um,
nice
I-
shoes, want to meet for coffee and talk about roles, but
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is you want to find out who these people are as human beings. So, listening to a podcast that they've been on, reading an interview that they've done, finding out what they're saying on social media if they have a public profile, finding out who they are, taking a class with them or workshop or private coaching with them, and getting to know them a bit. And when they share things about themselves, write it down, you guys. Like, that's gold information. So, and that's just normal human stuff so that like when you reach out later on, instead of saying like how are you, you can say how are you, how's your daughter Ava doing, how's the pandemic been on you guys, I'm sure homeschooling must be challenging. Like actually connecting as a person as opposed to just this is an actor, this is a casting director, and having like such hard lines. I think they want to see us as people. I always say, you want them to know, like, and trust you. Well, they trust you from you doing good work and being a trained actor. They can't know you if you don't share anything about yourself with them. And that's how they like you, right? So, like, what are you willing to share and how can you add value to their lives as well? And then it can become like a reciprocal kind of relationship where you're adding value to them by being an actor, of course, but like you can even share things that excite you about the world, like share a hike that you went on with somebody in an email. Like, guys, it's not a crazy thing to do, it's just adding value.
hmm that's great. Like I feel like, getting these tips would be extremely helpful, especially for people who like myself, like I'm really pretty shy. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, until I get to know somebody. So
Hmm.
it's always a sort of like a strange thing of knowing that you need to network or make those sorts of things, but at the same time, not having the time and space to do it in the way that would make me the most comfortable. So having to trying to figure out like how to do it in a way that feels right to me.
Yeah, it
You know?
has to be authentic and feel good. But we also never really went anywhere doing things that made us feel totally comfortable, right? Like we have
Yeah.
to be willing to step a little bit out of our comfort zone sometimes.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times, casting is shy too. And a lot of the times, they are not really, it's a thankless job for a lot of them. So showing that you are interested in them is going to feel good to them, right? Like we want to make people feel something when we connect with them.
Yeah.
So remembering that and also being okay with like, you don't have to be best friends with everyone. Like you don't, not every casting person or producer or director is going to be like your people.
Yeah.
That's okay. They don't all have to be. There have been casting director workshops I've taken where I'm like, yep, nope, I'm never gonna like I'm just not interested in this energy
Yeah.
here. And it doesn't mean that I won't like send a professional update once in a while, but I'm not gonna invest really my time and energy into like creating a real relationship with that person. If they want to call me in, great. But like you
Right.
you are allowed to say this is the what I want in my life and this is not so much what feels good.
Okay. Did you guys hear that? Like, even when it comes down to your career, your creative career, you are allowed to set those boundaries. I feel
Yes.
like that is definitely, I mean, I don't know how much in other industries it affects people, but I feel like for actors, so many of us have it ingrained in our minds that we're supposed to be like yes men or yes women, of not having those clear boundaries because you're just supposed to be so grateful for any little opportunity you get. And
Yeah.
and that is just talk ab- talk about a way to like crush your soul. By
Oh,
not having these boundaries and like it like the giving tree or something, just give, 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 give. It's like give and receive. It's still a relationship. What's the relationship that
yes.
you have with your career? What's the relationship you have with, you know, yeah, what boundaries do you set up?
And I'm always learning this. I am not the pro at this. I mean, I do lots of things to take care of myself and to continue to learn these boundaries because as, somebody who is, a people pleaser and a bit of a recovering perfectionist, like I have a hard time saying no. Even, this podcast and scheduling it, you said, "Oh, I usually do the weekends at noon." And I had to say, "You know what? Like I work 6 days a week right now, you guys. I work on Sundays. So Saturdays is my one day off. So I'm like, I'll do it earlier in the day, but noon in the middle of my one day off, like,
Oh,
is not something that like I'm open to anymore. But in the past, I would have said yes. And I'm learning like there are certain things that I have to do to also just be able to give you what you want from me, right? Like
yeah.
to give you my full self. I need to take care of myself first, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I would have done it on a different day for you. And
No,
I love that
no.
I just love that you pointed that out too, though, because I admit that's also one of the reasons why I like when I ask people, hey, would you want to be on? I pick this time for the same reason, because I've made myself write down in my journal which one is my day.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
and so if it's somebody where it's like, I really want you on, it's hard to schedule. And I'm like, okay, well, I can put it into my day, but, I try not to. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
No, and I'm just pointing it out because it's a journey that like I'm constantly working on and learning and like don't have all the answers to
Yeah.
at all. And I talk to my therapist and I encourage all my clients to go to therapy. Like a coach is not a therapist, totally different things.
Yeah.
So setting boundaries and like in terms of the career, like I have boundaries where like I am not particularly passionate about commercials, so I don't have a commercial agent. It's not something that like I feel like I have to do because someone says, "Well, you're an actor, so this is like you do everything." And it's
Yeah.
not to say that I would never do a commercial. Of course I would, but it's not something I'm particularly passionate about, so it's not something that I follow.
That's again, you guys, listen to this gold. And it's great because, how much time does it take out of your life?
Right.
I mean, because I did get to do a number of commercials when I was in LA and I enjoyed doing them, but people would be like, "Oh, you made like X amount of money on this day." And it's like, well, actually, no, because think of all of the hours for that 1 hour commute to get down there for all the commercials that you didn't get. So the
Yeah.
day that you actually get booked, you don't actually make that money. You don't
Hmm.
actually
Yep.
make that amount. So if you don't enjoy it, and and you're busy at that time, so it's
Yeah.
a burden for you to give up something else, well then, you know what? You don't have to do it.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I try to help people see is like what you think is the way that you have to run your business is not. You are in charge. You are the CEO. You can decide what you want.
Yeah. That's so cool. Um, okay, so oh, so many good things I wanted to ask you in so little time. Um, okay, so I know you've already kind of touched on this a bit with just, being a bit, like having perfectionist tendencies, also being a high achiever and all of those things. Um, do you have like can you talk a little bit more in depth of any particular challenges with choosing to be an actor, like that path, and then what's particularly challenging and how do you overcome those challenges? Like, of course, setting boundaries is important, um, and taking
Yeah.
time out for yourself as well. But does anything else come to mind?
Yeah, when you talk about the career of an actor, I mean, I think one thing that's really challenging, and I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but is finding ways to enjoy the journey and the unknowns that happen. I mean, sometimes you're really, really good years, and then you have really, really hard years, and finding a way to flow through that and have other things in your life that provide value. I think a lot of the times as actors, it's kind of wrapped up so much in our identity and our sense of self and our purpose. And I think that's amazing because I think art and acting and storytelling can change the world. I think that, we have a vital role in our society, even though our society doesn't look at us that way a lot of the time. But that being said, we can't put all of our own like love for ourselves in like rewards of our acting work. We have to find it in other things, whether that's other hobbies that fulfill us, whether that's relationships with family members and loved ones. We can't just like have that be the only thing. And I also think a lot of times we tie up our financial health with our acting career. And I always encourage actors to really, really not have your goal be like, I want to just be working enough so that I can pay all my bills acting. Like, I want you to think about all the celebrities have like 5,000 different streams of income, like revenue, but like what can we be doing now that we also love that can like sustain us? So when we do go in the audition room, it's not about the money. It's not about booking that job for that reason. It's like because we're collaborating and we're showing this is our artistic expression, this is our version of the character. And I think a lot of times like we have to find a separation between those two things. I went on a long tangent. I don't know how we got here, but anyway.
Listen, your tangents, I keep saying it's gold. Like, I every yeah, yes, yes, yes to everything that you just said. Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes I would sit and I would reflect upon I would like reflect upon and ask myself, well, when was I happiest doing acting? What what did I enjoy the most? And it wasn't always the thing that had, I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier. It wasn't always the thing that society was like, oh, that's the most impressive. It was whatever was the most sort of emotionally satisfying to me and the
Yeah.
most where I felt the most connected to other people.
Hmm.
It's part of that team, that team that I love, the collaboration, like you were saying, and just getting clear on it. And I kind of came to realize that I enjoyed it most when I pursued it with like the love and the passion and everything that's there, but the weight of it in my life was almost like it was more of a hobby. So I didn't need it. I wasn't desperate for it.
Yeah.
And defining myself by other things as well versus this is the only thing that makes me me, and just the pressure and just the suffering that's involved in that. And I feel like it's such a tightrope walk where it's kind of hard to keep that balance.
Yeah.
But and so it's something to kind of continually work on, at least for myself. So I thought that was all totally spot on.
And it's tough because I mean, our egos get involved. Like, I definitely have an ego. We all do, and we want that validation of like booking that bigger job and like proving to ourselves that we could do it, that we've made it. Right. But is that helpful? Like, does that really make us feel like, because most of the time I see when my clients do, book their first co star or whatnot on TV, it's so fleeting, that joy, because they want the next thing. And even when we're on set sometimes, like, we'll be like, when am I wrapped, and it's like, you've worked so hard to get here and now you're not even enjoying it. And I've found that, this year I worked on this short film with some of my really good friends, and we actually filmed in my house, which was crazy. But that was so satisfying to me because it was a project that I worked on that I believed in, that like spoke to why I became an actor, because it was like loosely based on a true story, and it had a message that I thought is important to be out in the world. And I got to hang out with friends and meet some new artists and hang out with them. And like, that for me, I'm like so much more proud of doing that short film than I am of the TV show that I booked in this past year.
Yeah.
So I think I sometimes have to take a step back and say, chill out, it's okay. And I put pressure on myself too. I'm like, I'm a career coach. If I'm not booking, people are going to think, well, who is she to tell me what to do if she's not successful herself, which is, of course, a story that I tell myself, which isn't true. Uh, but we have to kind of set our egos aside sometimes and remember why we started doing this in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and that was another thing. I was like, "Oh, it'll be fun to talk like coach to coach on these like different aspects that we like to coach in," or
Yeah.
um, because sometimes I feel that way as well, and then I think, well, if I watch like a gymnastic coach or something, I don't expect them to get on the floor and start doing those moves.
Right. My
Like
husband,
you just
my husband, well, he said to me, well, Jenna, the sometimes the best coaches aren't always the best players. I was like, I'm not sure how I should take
well,
that.
exactly. It's like because we actually are.
but
Like,
but there is truth in that, like,
it's
you don't
another skill set,
it's
though.
totally
It's like,
another
and
skill
we
set.
just happen to have both, which is beautiful.
There we go. Love it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be like sending my husband death threats now. Hilarious.
Yeah, but it is a different skill set. I remember, was that in a few good men or something? I don't remember. I
I don't
should. I
know.
loved that movie. I saw it like so many times because I used to really want to be a lawyer. Among
Oh,
like I used to want to be a lot of things, but like being a lawyer was like at the top of my list for quite a while.
I
So
could totally see you as a lawyer, like
yeah.
dedicated, driven, like you're fighting for somebody's rights. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
exactly, right? Oh
But that's what you do
man.
as a coach. That's what you do as a coach.
Exactly.
You're just
It,
fighting for them with them.
it's so true. Exactly. It's like I won't let you talk down to yourself.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
be kind to yourself, but at the same time, don't like let your own BS get in your way.
Yeah, isn't
Like
that?
hold yourself accountable, but at the same time, hold yourself accountable by giving yourself like a nice hug too, you know?
Yes, I totally feel you.
Yeah. Um, oh boy. Okay, well, then I went on a tangent. Okay, so let's see. Um, ooh, what actually, you know what? Let's make sure to talk about the New York Times experience because that that sounds pretty incredible. So how did the whole, your Actors Rise newsletter, am I getting the name right here?
Yeah, totally.
Along with then, you being featured in the Times. Can you talk about that whole experience?
Yeah. So I had kind of just gone off on my own as a career coach. I've been coaching for years. And when you met me, had been coaching with a company and had just kind of gone off on my own in January. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. Um, and honestly, my instinct was just like, how do I get people this information that they so desperately need? Because I was getting text messages and phone calls from panicked friends being like, oh my goodness, how do I get unemployment? I don't know how to do this. And I was getting messages being like, there's 5,000 open calls. Jenna, what are all the open calls? Can you please tell me what's happening? And so I was just like, I'm just going to put all this information in one place for my friends and send it to them. And so I just sent this newsletter to 36 people in early March. And it just kind of grew from word of mouth and people wanting the information in the newsletter. I was sending it 5 days a week then, but now I send it once a week. And uh, it it kind of took on a life of its own, to be honest. And I just kept putting out content of like what was actually happening in the industry, where were casting directors doing these Instagram lives, some mindset tips for people, financial tips, creative ways to keep your brain going and stay healthy during quarantine. And yeah, I honestly am so flabbergasted by the New York Times thing. I still really haven't processed it. And in true Jenna fashion, when I found out, I like couldn't even receive it. Like I really had a hard time like accepting that like I deserved it, because I felt like so many people had done so much for actors during this time. Like, who was I to receive the accolades from the New York Times? And my husband was like, "Aren't you happy? Aren't you happy?" Like, and I was like, "I don't know. Like, I don't feel anything."
It's
And
like shocking.
yeah, and I felt very unworthy. And I had to like kind of do some work on myself to be like, why is this so hard to accept that people want to show you gratitude for this time that you've spent? And I think because I felt like I had gotten so much in return from doing the newsletter, from giving, I created so many amazing relationships in the industry, and I've had so many clients. My coaching company has like exploded. I kind of felt like I'd gotten enough in return and I didn't need to be celebrated in this way. And I still feel like that, but at the same time, I've received it now and I'm very grateful. But it's been an interesting journey. It's not one that I expected this year at all, but none of us could have foreseen this year.
Right. That's so true. Well, I mean, yeah, I thought it was so exciting and I saw it and I'm like, of course. I mean, like I was just I mean, I was just so excited for you. And then I wasn't really familiar with the newsletter, I think, until I saw like both things pop up in my feed around the same time. So I'm like, let me get on that. Let me check out the newsletter. This is so cool. You guys, seriously, check it out because I was just so impressed too. It looked like a full-time job to like that one newsletter. I'm like, my goodness, how did you, it's just wow. So that's
Thank
just so
you.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely took a lot of time when I was sending it 5 days a week. It still takes a lot of time. And now I've recently hired an assistant, which is amazing. And she's amazing. So that's been really helpful in, allowing myself to continue. And I just want actors to have tools and information and resources so that they can continue to pursue their career. And I just feel like a lot of the time people can be cagey sometimes about information, withholding it from their actor friends. And I'm all about creating a sense of community, the idea that we all rise together when we support one another. There's room in this industry for everyone. So here's all the information. Do what you will with it. I'm going to put it in one place and you can access it, and hopefully it will serve you or make you smile or whatever.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I love that it also came from this place of giving. Like you're giving and then you're receiving and it's this like kind of energy flow back and forth.
Yeah,
Um
I've definitely learned the more that you give, the more that you receive. It's crazy. I mean, that's been the lesson that I learned in 2020 for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I do think hopefully this will be a useful talking point right now. If not, we'll just gloss over it. But I do find though that well, this is why I find that boundaries are so important. And I think um this is probably a lesson I got a little bit later. Uh because if you have a giving personality type, I think sometimes, yes, like giving and receiving, that's like the ultimate way to go. I think because if you stop giving and then you get cut off and you can't receive anything then and it's just kind of like, it's just like this sort of it could be a negative spiral.
Yeah, you
But I
can feel
think
resentful too.
yeah, and I think though that also giving without some sort of clear boundaries can be potentially dangerous for you. Do you know what I mean? And so the way that you had set it up where it's like this was something you enjoyed doing, it was a gift that you wanted to give to people and not having any sort of expectations, like I think that kind of giving is so powerful. But the giving that comes with um, some sort of expectation, it
Yeah.
can be dangerous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely felt very overwhelmed at times doing the newsletter and felt like there was an expectation that I had set for delivering it now. And sometimes when you show up and say, I'm going to offer this thing for free, then how do you stop it? It's like kind of like a snowball that's going down the hill and it's just getting bigger and bigger and it starts to get kind of out of control. And I did feel that way for a while. And I had to take a couple weeks off at one point and recently hired this assistant who's now really helping me curate the newsletter, and I have systems in place now, so it's like a lot easier. But yeah, I think that is the detriment of being a giver sometimes, is that like you overgive and you create overwhelm for yourself. And just yesterday I posted on Instagram, I had a day where like I had to cancel some things on my calendar and I had to like really take care of myself because I mean, in the past 9 months, I haven't taken much time off at all. Like I took off Christmas and like that's about it. I mean, and I was working Saturdays and Sundays, and like I've realized like now, I have a wait list right now for private clients, and that was really hard for me to do because like I want to help everyone. But I'm realizing like I can't help everyone well if I'm not taking care of myself. So yeah, it's a lesson I'm still learning too. 100%. I'm in the trenches with you.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And the other thing too about like being coaches and that sense of being like you need to kind of in a way present yourself in a certain way, but at the same time like you're human and it's important to let that show as well.
Yeah. And I found the more vulnerable I am and the more I share that with people, they actually respect me more for it because
Mhm.
they're like, oh, like she seems like she has it all together all the time and she's having an off day. Oh, I can have an off day too. And I'm not going to judge myself for that. And I think that's important for us, like high achieving types, to show that, like, what we see, what we post most of the time on Instagram, like that's the highlight reel, right? Like that's not necessarily, um, what's actually going on behind the scenes. And I try on my Instagram to share those vulnerabilities. So it's not just like this picture perfect, like it's so easy for me. I just like get up and like have all this free time and it's amazing. It's like it is work and it is hard. I love it, but I have to set boundaries and I'm always learning how to better take care of myself.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. All right. So, I mean, I know we're almost at time here already. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, what? Ooh, okay. Two questions or three. We'll see. Answer in whatever order you like. The
Uh-oh.
best and worst advice you've ever been given, and then something you wish you could tell your younger self.
So I think some of the worst advice that I got and hear all the time being repeated is that if you can think of being anything other than being an actor, go do that thing. And I hate that advice because I could do a lot of things with my life. I am very smart and capable and heart centered and driven. And I could have gone into PR and I could have, been an English teacher. There's so many things that I could have done. And I think I would have been fulfilled doing a lot of those things too. But I wanted to be an actor and I chose this. And also, if I change my mind, that's okay too. But it's also not the only thing I can do while being an actor. I can also be a coach. I also produced an off Broadway play that ran for a year. I also have worked in casting. So, I also want to be a mom someday. It doesn't mean that like that's the only thing that I am. And I hate that advice. So, that's the worst advice. Um, does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. It very much does. I also hated it. It's like, are you kidding? We can I mean, even if even if you think of an actor that maybe isn't like an extraordinarily top-notch whatever, just like a sort of more basic actor that's still able to get work. Well,
Basic actor.
just a basic actor, okay? Get your pumpkin spice chai. I love those by the way. But anyway, but anyway, you know, they still show up on time, memorize a script, take direction, take constructive feedback, can work with a team. Like those sorts of skills translate so well to so many things. So
Yes.
yeah, I think for me, what you said 1,000% it resonates, but also the piece though, the piece that I the piece that I do agree with that wasn't added on to those statements, if
Uh-huh.
you could do anything else and be just as happy. Because I think honestly, I feel like life would probably be easier.
Interesting.
However,
Yeah.
like if I don't work on something creatively within a certain amount of time, let's say like I need that month off or however long you need to regroup or life stuff, whatever, then I just honestly it starts making me sad. Like
Yeah.
it's just like I if I don't do it enough, I it makes me sad. So I can have these fleeting moments of like, oh, what if I went to law school, or oh, what if I did this, or what if I that? But you know, when I don't do those things, I don't weep because I
Yeah.
miss it so much. Um,
I think part of the thing about being an actor is that we have such great curiosity and we,
mhm,
want to live all these different lives. So I
exactly.
think, you thinking about having become a lawyer or me thinking about, having worked in PR as a therapist, which is probably what I would have done if I had done something else. Um, I think that's normal and that's so
Yeah.
natural for us to have those questions. And that's part of the reason why I love to deep dive into a character because you get to take on that skin for a while and you get to live that experience. And how cool is that? I mean, that's the best. To go back to
Definitely.
yeah, I don't know what the best advice I've ever gotten is. That's so hard for me to just like think of what that would be. I mean, it's probably go to therapy and be, that you're you're enough, which is really what I would like sort of say to my younger self. I think that I would tell her like you don't have to be perfect. Like you really don't. That's so okay. And you are going to learn and grow and evolve and who you are is just enough.
Yeah. Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, because actually circling back to another point you made earlier about as an actor sometimes you have great years, sometimes hard years, like you book a lot or you don't book, blah blah blah, is actually being clear or realistic. I want a better word than that, of just seeing things for what they are and not taking on blame and weight that isn't yours to carry. So like for example, that's the nature of the work. Sometimes you work, sometimes you don't. Like, are you doing everything you can that's within your power? Hold yourself accountable to that, but don't take on that other baggage that's just like, you know and so when you talk about like the need to be perfect or feeling like you have to be perfect, it's false thinking because nobody's perfect.
Right. You're
And
right.
like and then also having a better definition for ourselves about like, well, if I were perfect, or what would be the perfect, what would that even be? What
Yeah,
does that mean?
totally. I think a lot of the times we think like, oh, well, I'll be happy when I book that guest star, or I'll be happy when I get that series regular. And it's just never enough. Like we have to find ways to like be present with ourselves and find joy right now because this is the moment that we are in and we're living and breathing our life in this moment. So how are we going to enjoy that? And it doesn't mean we're not going to have crap days and things aren't going to be hard sometimes, but like overall, how can we be present in our lives and not be just looking constantly for being better or the next big thing that's going to make us feel whole?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. The next big thing that'll make us feel whole. Guess what? Go look in the mirror. That's the next best thing that's going to make you feel whole.
Yes.
It's been there from the beginning.
Yes. And I have to do more mirror work myself, like we all do.
Yeah, you know. I had a friend who she actually did this exercise where she actually removed all of her mirrors because again, it's like doing these things in a way that works for you. And for
Yeah.
her, it didn't help for her to have mirrors. When she took away the mirrors, she felt like she could go inside and then see that inside, inside herself versus she was quite judgy of herself. Like I thought she was
Yeah.
lovely, totally lovely. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't get it, but that's what you're dealing with. So do what works for you. And that
Yeah.
helped her.
It's the story that she was telling herself when she looked in the mirror
Yeah.
about who she was. And I know the stories that we sometimes tell ourselves when we scroll on Instagram are not great either. So taking
Yeah.
down those mirrors that we think that we should be, seeing ourselves reflected in these, ridiculous perfect versions of the people that are not real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, oh, cool. Oh, and you know what? I didn't even ask you this one earlier, so we're gonna do it now. It's the
Uh-oh.
how it's no, it's great. It's actually kind of like the main, it's sort of the main sort of quandary of the podcast in a way of how has uh being in the arts, being an actress, and then also if you want to say as a career coach as well, um, how has the practice of that empowered your life or helped you through a difficult time? What are the sort of life lessons that to share?
I definitely feel like I am so much more of an empathetic person and can listen better because I'm an actor. I feel like I can see people and feel where they're at and understand them better. I think, there's so much that brings us closer when we really like look into our own humanity than our differences, right? And I think being an actor like really has just taught me that we're all so much more alike than we're different. And I know that sounds like cliche a little bit, but you know, forgiveness I think comes from that too, like being able to find a way to forgive people because you see what they've been through that made them who they are and that maybe they didn't have as much control or the resources that you had or whatever. So I think that's a tool that I've gained from it and I try to practice in my life.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I think it's a quote unquote cliche for a reason because
Yeah.
that is our art. It's how often when people are at work do they sit around and imagine what the other person is going through? How often are you at the office and they're just like, okay, step away from the computer, go stand next to your so and so, look
Yeah.
into their eyes, observe like who they are, what's going on with them, and what their backstory is. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. So it's our work.
And I think that's like as a coach too, being like a helper, that's been something that like I feel like I've always kind of had, but learning how to see it through somebody else's eyes is very different than just seeing it through your own lens,
Yeah.
and being able to take on seeing things their way can really help you get clarity on how to help them too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's also one of my favorite things about like being a coach as well too and like coaching, you know, um auditions or whatever. It's like these techniques work for me when giving that reaction. Like if you need to be like really angry or cry, whatever emotional thing it is, it's like sure, I use this and this to get there. But
Yeah.
telling to somebody else it can be like a foreign language or it just doesn't work for them. They're
Right.
wired differently, their tendencies, whatever. It doesn't work. So it's like, I don't got to hold on to any of that. Let's try another way in. And that puzzle
Yes.
of it is just so satisfying.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, that gets me excited just about like working as an actor because like you never know how somebody's going to communicate to you. Will you get it? Like what's
Uh-huh.
your process going to be versus the way that they communicate it to you? That gets me excited.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm such a
Super
nerd.
fun. I love it. No, same. It's great. Okay, so I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be on the podcast. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
Yes.
Yeah, super fun. You guys, okay, so let me not get out of order here because this part is also important. So please remember to follow at that Doolittle pretty much everywhere. And then you can check out the Actors Rise newsletter at www.bitly.com/ actors rise newsletter. And of course, I'm going to have, as always, I'm going to have this in the show notes and whatnot. So yeah, thanks again for Jenna Doolittle for her time. It's been
Thank you so
amazing.
much for having me. It's so nice to catch up after all these years. And I love what you're doing with the podcast. I was listening to a bunch of episodes, and you're
Aw.
doing really a huge service to actors and to creatives, putting this information out there and making it accessible to them and creating a community and, giving people answers to questions that they might be too scared to ask themselves. So
Aw,
you're awesome.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And,
Yeah.
again, it kind of goes back to what you're saying of just wanting to give. Like, I think all of us, we have our gifts and our things that we, part of it is like what it is that we love to give, and I love to help people feel like they're enough. And I also love to remind people and myself as well that this process of acting or the process of like being in the arts really is its own reward. And yes, it's great when we have all those other things we want to come with it. But even if we don't, there's all this wonderful life stuff that helps us have a better life.
Yeah,
And
a hundred
yeah,
percent.
taking some time to acknowledge that, and having other awesome people on to share their perspectives and what they've learned. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me.
Absolutely. And then, as always, you guys, of course, if you like the podcast, please like, share, subscribe. Those 5-star reviews you leave on Apple Podcasts and the comments, it's really a big help to getting the word out. Sharing it is huge. And if you do have, the ability or the desire to help with the financial backing, you can go to Patreon at Beyond Technique with Samantha Rund. And just, it also helps for all the production value, of course, and everything like that. And then, as always, if you're looking for a coach to help you with performance skills so that you can bring more of your whole self and your authenticity to your life and work, whether that's on stage, on screen, interviews, relationships, anything that performance can help you be more fully present, I'm always happy to help. And you can reach me at beyondtechniquecoaching@gmail.com. So thanks so much, and stay safe and stay healthy.